Part 59. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 583. Just when Takahashi Makoto was waiting for Yoshida with full of malice, Mashiro girl came to visit again with Kota boy. Tisk, it turns out it's you guys. Takahashi Makoto, who had been deliberately putting on a melancholy look, curled his lips unhappily and waved his hand impatiently after seeing that the visitors were Mashiro girl and Kota boy. Girl, you came here today, aren't you trying to change your job to become a magical girl? If so, I'm sorry, you shouldn't come to me, but to find a creature from another world that looks like a rabbit. Well, by the way, its name is QB, and it has the special ability of activating the job change of a magic girl with just one wish. No, Uncle, Kota boy is not only the owner and manager of Mashiro girl, now it seems that he also has the special hidden job of negotiator of Mashiro girl. We are here today because... Isn't it you, the boy, who is going to change jobs, not Mashiro? Takahashi Makoto looked at Sarada in confusion, and spread his hands helplessly. Sorry, job change business is not within my jurisdiction. I recommend you to find a luminous sphere called Lord. As long as you have enough obsession, whether it is cute girl breeder or girl summoner, you can choose to change jobs. No, we are. Hey, even if you register for marriage, let's not talk about your age. It seems that business is not with me, right? Takahashi Makoto said with a look of disdain. She waved her hand. Young man, this is not Jinsanzyuji-ya, nor is it the legendary detective agency where the elementary school students of the god of death are hidden, so those businesses like finding a cat, finding a person, or even finding a person are no longer within the scope of acceptance. White coat, manga manuscript. Mashiro girl handed the manga manuscript in her hand to Takahashi Makoto, and then stared at the food on the table. After a moment of silence, she turned to the boy Sarada beside her and said seriously, Sarada, bomb and cake, I want to eat. After noticing the bomb and cake on the table, the corners of Sarada's mouth twitched, and he really experienced what embarrassment is. That won't do. The bomb and cake on the table is the Raya prop I used to Lolita feeding with Rin. He could actually say such a crazy reason in such a serious tone. Takahashi Makoto's alternative way of rejection made the corners of the other two men present twitch at the same time. Even if you beg me so sincerely, I won't be merciful and give you the cake. White coat, stingy, Mashiro pouted, and her eyes turned from friendly to hostile when she looked at Takahashi Makoto. It's just the cuteness of a naive girl, and you dare to use it as a mental attack against me. Takahashi Makoto, who has a wife, a house, and a pair of daughters, will naturally not be killed instantly by the cuteness of Mashiro like the simple boy Sarada. Humph, girl, you are too sweet. I know. I will buy it for you when I go back later. Sarada boy thinks that covering his face is definitely the best choice at this moment, no other. Sarada. Mashiro girl's eyes shone with a ray of light, and she said seriously, I want to eat 3. I know. This tone of resignation, Sarada boy, I really sympathize with your various pleasure lives after marriage in the future. Girl, you came here today to ask me to help you observe the comics, right? But you haven't forgotten the rules of equivalent exchange, right? So. Picking up the comics in his hand, Takahashi Makoto said with a joyful smile, ding ding. Mashiro, it's time for Steins Gate's choice again. Again, the young boy Sara, who had unbearable memories, saw this familiar scene and felt a little heartache, and a pain in a place that cannot be described. Well, I'm ready. Mashiro waved her clenched fist, looking like white coat uncle, you can start. Then, my turn. It's time. Now Takahashi Makoto, you are discussing matters related to the comics with Mashiro, not having a dark duel with Jide, okay. Bonkachan is delicious, right? Especially since you have a strong obsession with Bonkachan, You really want to eat that bonkachin right now, right? So you want me to help you observe the comics you value, then according to the principle of equivalent exchange. Could it be? Looking at the pleasant devilish smile on Takahashi Makoto's face, the young boy Sarada, who vaguely guessed what Takahashi Makoto was going to say next, helplessly covered his face and muttered softly, "This uncle is really, too much. For the next week, not only will I not eat a bite of bonkachin, but I will also offer the bonkachin that originally belonged to you as a week's share to the great crazy cartoonist Hao Winkuma." Takahashi Makoto put the comics that Mashiro girl had handed to him on the table, picked up the bonkachin that Mashiro girl had been drooling over for a long time, and shook it left and right. "Then girl, start choosing." "I don't eat bonkachin anymore." Mashiro girl turned her head away, put on a look of regret, hesitated for a moment, and said insincerely, "Girl, let me remind you, don't even think about cheating." Makoto Takahashi saw Mashiro's performance, he lightly snapped his fingers and summoned the cats and dogs in the house, squinting his eyes and smiling. Said, "If you really choose to let me help you observe the manga manuscript and give up the bonkachin, I will send my most powerful ministers Pavlov and Schrödinger to conduct a long-term investigation on you. 1 week of comprehensive follow-up and supervision." The names of these cats and dogs are really good. Listening to Takahashi Makoto's introduction, his eyes turned to the cats and dogs crawling next to Takahashi Makoto, and then thought about the kittens he had adopted. Sarada the boy suddenly felt that his talent in naming was simply too weak. Devil. Demon in white coat. After struggling for a moment, the real white girl screamed expressionlessly. "By the way, if you, girl, choose bonkachin as both a staple food and snack in the next 3 days, I will also help you observe and review the manga manuscript." Makoto Takahashi ignored Mashiro's request. Tangled, kindly and well-intentioned proposed another method, and more importantly, you can eat the bonkachin now stored at home without any scruples. Takahashi Makoto gently pushed the bonkachin that had just been placed on the table in front of the Mashiro girl, then turned and entered the kitchen, placed a large bag of bonkachin on the table, and waited for the girl to make her choice without saying a word. Manga, bonkachin. Looking at the manga manuscripts placed on the table, and then looking at the bonkachin stacked on the table, the Mashiro girl was confused at the intersection of an important choice in life. No, after just a short silence, the Mashiro girl started to pick up the bonkachin on the table and went straight into eating. "I mean uncle." Sarada boy looked at the Mashiro girl who started to eat quickly, and asked Takahashi Makoto in a low voice, "Is your multiple choice question too easy for Mashiro? I'm telling you, don't tell me it's been 3 days, even if I only eat bonkachin for a whole month, there won't be any problem for Mashiro. Simple." "Boy, you are too young and too sweet." Makoto Takahashi put on an innocent look, "this is just a teaching method." "Hey, what kind of teaching method is this? I want the Mashiro girl to understand that there are always events in life where you can't have your cake and eat it too." Makoto Takahashi gently patted Sarada boy's shoulder and said slowly in a comforting tone, "In other words, let the real white girl realize, what is the original sin of gluttony." A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 584. After finishing the conversation with Sarada boy, Takahashi Makoto ignored the Mashiro girl who was trying to realize the original sin of gluttony, and instead handed over part of the manga draft he had completed to his assistant, Uncle Tintin, to complete it. After finishing, he continued to read the manga manuscript that Mashiro girl had given him before. Although Makoto Takahashi previously stimulated the Mashiro girl through original sin of anger, allowing this talented cartoonist to integrate his own angry emotions into it when completing the manga manuscript, this does not mean that Mashiro, a talented painter, a young girl can create an excellent comic. You must know that comics that can only make people feel indignant after reading them. This kind of approach that is almost partial may be able to support one or even several chapters in a short time. The content of the words, but it definitely cannot support an entire comic. Although I understand what you want to draw, girl. Makoto Takahashi slowly observed the manga manuscript in his hand, frowned slightly, and sighed with some regret, but it is a pity that for some girls, you have not yet experienced it. Or what I have experienced, when it is reflected in the comics, some settings are too taken for granted. The plot is wrong. Mashiro girl stopped eating and stared at Makoto Takahashi with wide eyes. It could be seen that the girl was very concerned about her manga manuscript. No, it should be the bankichan on the table. They have all been wiped out, so the Mashiro girl has time to focus on her manga manuscript, right? Or, the emotion is wrong. Both. Makoto Takahashi said unceremoniously, the answer that made the Mashiro girl a little disappointed. Then he raised his head and turned his gaze to the Sarada boy, who was about to comfort the Mashiro girl, and waved to him. The manga manuscript in the page asked, "Young man over there, the manga manuscript completed by Mashiro girl this time, have you read it before coming here?" Mashiro's manga, after being teased many times by Makoto Takahashi and teased twice by Mashiro, Sarada-san, who originally planned to be a quiet and handsome boy, was stunned by Makoto Takahashi's sudden question and took a peek. After fixing his eyes on the Mashiro girl, he scratched his head in embarrassment and said very shyly, "No, I haven't read it." After Mashiro finished the manga manuscript this time, he and I came directly to your uncle. What's wrong with Mashiro's comics here? When Mashiro-sama completes the shortcomings I will mention next, please be sure to carefully observe the manga manuscript after you go back. Makoto Takahashi put the manga manuscript aside, patted Sarada boy on the shoulder, and he said with a smile in a very pleasant tone, "Believe me, young man, this time, Mashiro Shoujo's manga is unexpectedly exciting." Looking at Makoto Takahashi's nervous look, Sarada boy suddenly had an ominous premonition. Hey, how can a man hesitate at this moment? As if he was dissatisfied with Sarada's reaction, Takahashi Makoto angrily scolded Sarada, "Young man, you shouldn't be so decisive at this time. Give me a reply. Even if you don't believe me, you still have to believe in the white girl you believe in." The ominous premonition is getting stronger. The silent Sarada boy's inner thoughts at this moment should be this, right? White coat. The Mashiro girl pulled Takahashi Makoto's white coat with her hand. In other words, the Mashiro girl really just wanted to attract Takahashi Makoto's attention, instead of taking the opportunity to wipe off some greasy hair after eating bankichan. Hand. The problem with comics is, the plot of the manga about you, girl, is to show the twists and turns of a boy and a girl during their relationship, and the disputes that arise due to misunderstandings. Makoto Takahashi did not care about the problem of Mashiro girl slandering his white coat, but started seriously pointing out the flaws in the Mashiro Shoujo manga manuscript. But the so-called original sin of jealousy is not just as simple as misunderstandings and quarrels between men and women. Jealous, the real white girl blinked her eyes in confusion, as if it was difficult to understand the meaning of this word. Let's give a simple example. Makoto Takahashi turned to look at Sarada boy, with a devilish smile on his face. Suppose one day, Sarada boy no longer continues to take care of you, nor does he continue to give you anything. You bought the bankichan, in other words, the person Sarada boy took care of became another girl, and all the bankichan you bought were given to others. Sarada, bankichan. Under Makoto Takahashi's repeated guidance, the Mashiro girl began to imagine such a scene. Her originally expressionless face gradually gathered a look of tangled melancholy, and then she seemed to want to, as if he knew something. He stared at Makoto Takahashi seriously and said with absolute certainty, "Everything is mine." Speaking of the Sarada boy who is inexplicably lying on the gun, at this time, should you complain about being used as the object of emotional analysis to Mashiro girl again, or should you be happy that Mashiro girl is persistent towards you? Paint whatever you see. Wherever you look, sunshine is sunshine, and flying birds are flying birds. This is a painter. Without too many thoughts or too many personal emotions, Mashiro girl will draw whatever she sees, because the paintings she draws are closest to natural and original scenes. That's why Mashiro girl will be called genius the name. But he doesn't draw anything he sees. Wherever he looks, the sun can be compared to holy light, and the birds can also be regarded as monsters. This is a cartoonist. Mixed with many complex ideas, the original simple paintings are filled with too many emotions of the cartoonist. Cartoonists such as Eiji Niizuma have different interpretations of each painting in the cartoon manuscript, which makes readers side by side. Following your own guidance and interpreting comics in different ways is the self-cultivation of most qualified cartoonists. It can be seen that compared to most human beings, the character of the real white girl can definitely be regarded as simple and pure. It is precisely because of this kind of character that when looking at things, Genbei girl will not be bound by mere human common sense, nor will she be contaminated by the complex thoughts of human psychology. Instead, she can see the essence of things directly and purely. For a painter, this is an enviable talent, but for a cartoonist, this is a hopeless obstacle. Just like the manga manuscript that Takahashi Makoto saw just now, what Mashiro girl wanted to express was just the daily events between the male protagonist and the female supporting character, which caused the heroine to misunderstand and become jealous, but because of Mashiro the girl has never been exposed to this aspect, so she doesn't know how to express it in comics. To be precise, Mashiro shoujo cannot create the image of a heroine who is jealous due to misunderstanding. This obsession, what should I say about Sarada Boy's good tricks at this moment? After looking at Sarada Boy jokingly, Takahashi Makoto once again brought the topic back to the direction of Mashiro's concern. Mashiro-chan, when I used Sarada Boy as an example just now, you were silent for a moment. Maybe I can't completely reproduce what you imagined, but what I want to say is, the plot that is missing in your manga manuscript. Exactly what you imagined before. Is that jealousy? After hesitating for a moment, the Mashiro girl asked with some uncertainty. It's true, Makoto Takahashi said with emotion while tapping the manga manuscript of Mashiro's shoujo with his fingers. Girl, the theme of your manga is daily love on campus, right? I have to say that this theme is very important to today's society. From your point of view, the compatibility is quite high. Hey uncle, Mashiro's manga. Sarada Boy seemed to have suppressed it for a long time, and he had an unhappiness urge to say, it's actually the daily events we live in Sakurasu. It's just that Mashiro reversed the genders of the male and female protagonists, and... Young man, of course I know about this. By the way, have you underestimated the great and crazy manga artist Phoenix Institute? Makoto Takahashi interrupted Sarada's words rudely. She sighed in a tone of you are so ignorant. The reason why I say that the theme chosen by Mashiro's shoujo is very suitable is not because I want to limit Mashiro's shoujo to draw only this type of comics, but I think that for Mashiro's shoujo this comic is very suitable for girls' growth as a cartoonist and in life. Mashiro's growth. Sarada Boy looked at the thoughtful Mashiro girl, and then stared at Makoto Takahashi with doubtful eyes, as if waiting for a reasonable explanation from a certain middle-class manga artist. Because of love, by the way, boy, who allowed you to look up at me with suspicion, Makoto Takahashi continued after unleashing the pressure exclusive to the arrogant manga artist Hohoin Kuma to Sarada Boy. When a white girl grows up, she lacks some things that normal humans should have, not boring existences like common sense, but some more essential emotions. Sarada Boy opened his mouth several times to defend himself against the words of a certain second-year manga artist, but he didn't know how to refute, because Sarada Boy understood that what Takahashi Makoto said at this moment was exactly the truth. Human beings should obviously be equal beings, however, human beings who are in love have strong emotions. I am good to you and you must be good to me. This is the arrogance of human beings. Human beings are obviously individuals with independent self, however, human beings who are in love are prone to the mentality of I am not worthy of the other person and I am not as good as the other person. This is human jealousy. Human beings clearly know that there must be gains and losses. However, when humans are in love, they don't know how to be grateful and cherish when they get something, but they will feel depressed and entangled because of the loss, and they will go crazy with frustration. This is the anger of humans. Human beings clearly know that only by giving will something be gained. However, humans who are in love only think about gaining but are unwilling to pay. This is human laziness. Human beings should obviously learn to be self-satisfied. However, human beings who are in love can't help but want to have more, want to occupy more time and more emotions of the other person. This is human greed. Human beings should know how to stop in moderation. However, human beings who are in love can always resist the temptation of love delicacies and eat one meal after another regardless of their fullness. This is human gluttony. Human beings clearly know that feelings originate from the spirit rather than the body. However, human beings who are in love can't help but ignore the spirit because they are obsessed with the body. This is human lust. The reason why human beings are called human beings is precisely because since their birth, human beings have been burdened with the sins known as the 7 deadly sins. They cannot avoid it and cannot get rid of it. Makoto Takahashi looked at the Mashiro girl, and then said seriously, he said, and love is the best manifestation of the 7 deadly sins. This is also the existence that the real white girl lacks understanding of as a human being. With the analysis of the 7 deadly sins of love, the mental attack from a certain Chuyunibaku manga artist directly put the boy Sarada into a state of inability to fight. And the girl Mashiro, who was listening to Takahashi Makoto's serious nonsense, had a glimmer of realization in her eyes. It seems that the girl Mashiro, who dreams of becoming a manga artist, will embark on a strange path under the guidance of a certain Chuyunibaku manga artist? No, 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 this should be just an illusion. Steins Gate doesn't have such an option at all, right? Whether it is nonsense or not, please judge for yourself, readers. Anyway, this is what a certain cat thinks and writes, and the above is meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 585. Yoshida, the editor in charge of the weekly magazine, has recently found that his job seems to have become much easier. Because a certain Chuyuni cartoonist was temporarily assigned the task of guiding new cartoonists to change jobs by the weekly magazine editor, Yoshida does not have to worry too much about what Makoto Takahashi will do. Every week, he only needs to go to Makoto Takahashi on time to collect the comic manuscripts of the manga One Punch Man. At the end of the month, he will temporarily collect the comic manuscripts of the manga White Rabbit Candy as the editor in charge of the monthly plug-in, and occasionally the comic manuscripts of a certain scientific railgun completed by Makoto Takahashi. So, Yoshida spent most of his free time on to supervise the Little Sea Otter. Especially under the advice of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist Goodwill and Joy, Yoshida has mastered the multiple battle plans of slackness against the Little Sea Otter. Yoshida, who originally needed to use words and body movements to suppress the Little Sea Otter, now only needs a look to make the Little Sea Otter kneel down in front of the desk with the wronged look, and with the tragic momentum of I can rest after finishing this chapter, he began to draw the comic book with enough resentment to break through the sky in another world with tears. Compared to the Little Sea Otter who delayed the submission of manuscripts with various excuses, Takahashi Makoto's performance in recent times can be said to have made a certain responsible editor quite satisfied. At the beginning, Yoshida was worried that Takahashi Makoto would delay his own serialization because of guiding Mashiro Girl to carry out the task of cartoonist change, but in the past month, whether it was weekly or monthly serialization, Takahashi Makoto was always able to hand in the comic manuscripts on time and in quantity, without any signs of delay at all. This made Yoshida's worries gradually dissipate, and gradually relaxed his defense against a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. Today, After using various means to obtain the comic manuscript from the Little Otter, the next recovery target of the conscientious editor recovery expert Yoshida is a certain Chuyunibu manga artist. Although his personality is far less difficult to deal with than Makoto, in terms of the professional ethics of the manga artist, if Hiramaru-kun can have Makoto's dedication, no, even if it's only half as good, I will be much more relaxed. But then again, if Makoto can be as obedient as Hiramaru-kun and his personality is not so bad, tisk tisk. Speaking of Yoshida, have you heard of the saying being too greedy will be punished by God? When he arrived at the door of Makoto Takahashi's house, Yoshida stopped imagining all kinds of impossible scenes and prepared to reach out and knock on the door. Although he had agreed on a time with Makoto Takahashi before, Yoshida said that he was a very polite editor-in-chief and would never break into the house without the permission of the manga artist like a certain colleague Yujiro. My beloved cat, I have been waiting for you for a long time. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Makoto Takahashi sitting in a chair facing him, and Yoshida instantly had a bad premonition. Unfortunately, before he could say anything, the next words of a certain Chuyunibaku cartoonist further confirmed Yoshida's premonition. This time's cartoon draft is a little troublesome. Trouble, seeing Makoto Takahashi's expression of "I don't want to elaborate," Yoshida immediately turned to Uncle Ding Ding, who was bowing his head, and asked, "Is there something wrong?" That, cough cough. Uncle Ding Ding's stuttering tone, coupled with his performance of looking around, made Yoshida's bad premonition even stronger. Yoshida-kun, it's actually about the comic manuscript of Aiken's One Punch Man. What's wrong with the comic manuscript of One Punch Man? Yoshida walked quickly to Uncle Ding Ding, grabbed the unfinished comic manuscript on the table, and asked in confusion while flipping through it quickly, "Did Aiken come up with some incredible plot again?" Of course not. This time, it was Makoto Takahashi who answered Yoshida. "As a crazy cartoonist, I won't draw a plot that makes people hate me." Hey, Chen, you really dare to say such a thing? Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto with contempt, and complained bluntly, "Think back to the comics you have serialized since your debut. 90% of the comics you serialized are tragic, and the remaining 10% are also moving towards tragedy." Nonsense. The comic White Rabbit Candy is a healing one. Takahashi Makoto naturally tried his best to deny Yoshida's evaluation, especially the next part of the plot that has not been published yet. "Humph, my cat, when that plot comes out, you and Jingzong Hao Yoshi-san, you will understand what true love is." "True love? Hee hee." Yoshida responded to Takahashi Makoto's self-evaluation with a hee-hee response, and decisively shifted the topic back to the comic manuscript of One Punch Man. "Now tell me, what is the problem with the comic manuscript of One Punch Man?" "Actually, that. Takahashi Makoto hesitated for a long time, and still did not give Yoshida any useful information. Just when a certain editor was about to explode, a middle school cartoonist cleared his throat and said in a serious tone, "Ahem, actually, it's the comic manuscript of One Punch Man, or let Ding Ding Ji-san tell it." "Eh? Let me talk." After taking over the topic, Uncle Ding Ding immediately felt the burning eyes of a responsible editor. Uncle Ding Ding, who was originally planning to speak, seemed to be frightened by Yoshida's longing eyes, and even his words became incoherent. Yes, Cheng hasn't, forget it, Cheng. I think this kind of thing, it's better for you to say it yourself." Bang. Seeing that Takahashi Makoto and Uncle Ding Ding would rather blame each other than talk about the real business, Yoshida's string of reason broke. "I say." A deep voice sounded. Yoshida looked back and forth at Takahashi Makoto and Uncle Ding Ding with a look that said, "I want to chop you up and eat you as soon as possible, whether it's Aiken or Ding Ding-san. Now, can you tell me what's wrong with the comic manuscript of One Punch Man? Because of some reasons, I suddenly don't want to continue drawing." Takahashi Makoto, who had just been happily shirking responsibility with Uncle Ding Ding, suddenly became a little depressed, and his tone of voice became a little low. "Oh, you don't want to continue drawing, huh?" Yashida reacted. What? Don't want to continue drawing, what the hell?" Because when I was instructing Mashiro girl, Aiken was impressed by the painting skills of the world-class painter I was stimulated, so Yashida-kun, you know. Uncle Ding Ding looked at Yashida, who was confused, and sighed in a helpless tone, although I have persuaded him many times during this period, but as you can see, it is useless. This blow is too big for Ah-Cheng. So my beloved cat, I don't want to continue drawing the comics of One Punch Man. Takahashi Makoto paused for a moment, shook his head gently, and continued to say something that shocked Yashida even more. "No, not only that, I have begun to doubt that can such an incompetent me really be called a cartoonist?" Takahashi Makoto was actually shocked by the painting talent of the white girl. Come on, are you kidding? The existence that claims to be a crazy cartoonist actually became so decadent because he felt the gap with world-class painters. This is a lie, isn't it? Yashida originally thought so. But now, looking at Takahashi Makoto's starting to doubt life look, Yashida suddenly felt that he had strongly recommended Takahashi Makoto to be responsible for guiding the world-class painter Mashiro to change his job to become a manga artist was a stupid and wrong decision. Aiken. The feeling of regret began to spread. Sorry. The feeling of guilt began to grow. I was really wrong this time. Yashida didn't know how to comfort Takahashi Makoto at this moment. Perhaps the only thing he could say now is this. A cat suddenly realized recently that competing with NPCs for luck will shorten his life. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 586. Yashida did not leave with the latest comic book of One Punch Man easily and smoothly as expected. Instead, he heard a piece of news that would make him bear the double pressure of guilt and self-blame for a period of time. In the end, Yashida's back when he left was so sad. Yeah, my dependent in guilt and my dependent cat in self-blame, two versions of Raya get square root. Just after Yashida's figure disappeared from his sight, Takahashi Makoto immediately swept away his previous decadent look, and took out the camera hidden in the dark to show off to Uncle Tintin, while happily turning on the self-praise mode. Ding Ding Ji-san, let me tell you, if I hadn't accidentally put all the talent points I originally brought with me into the profession of cartoonist, hee. Ah-Cheng, let's do this. Compared to Takahashi Makoto, who had a happy smile on his face and a sly expression, Uncle Ding Ding was a little hesitant. Isn't it a bit too much? Oh? Too much? After staring at Uncle Ding Ding with a weird look for a long time, Takahashi Makoto sighed faintly. Fortunately, my physical features only meet the human definition of male. In essence, I am still a demon. Men, they are really hypocritical creatures. Yes, I know it's hypocritical for me to say this now. As an assistant to a middle school cartoonist, Uncle Ding Ding naturally knows Takahashi Makoto, who is wearing a white coat but has a dark heart, so he knows very well that it is meaningless to discuss such a high-sounding topic as origin and difference of species at this moment, so he decisively changed the topic. But Cheng, can you be sure that Yashida-san's next actions will be exactly as you predicted? Humph, stupid question. Takahashi Makoto turned his head and looked out the window at the sky. Whether it's humans or demons, since they have the concept of existing in the world, they have long been controlled by the perceived but unproven existence in the dark. Just like a puppet on a string, what to say at what time, what to do at what time, all words and deeds have been set and arranged. In short, this is the choice of Stein's gate. The judgment of the puppet, from light-hearted to heavy-hearted. Takahashi Makoto suddenly changed his conversation style, and also successfully led Uncle Tintin astray. Tisk, fate, it's such a heavy topic. Some humans are able to predict the future not only because they can infer the probability and possibility of future events based on sufficient information, It's more likely that they are inferred under the invisible influence of fate and are not aware of it. Takahashi Makoto pushed the single frame glasses that he had taken out from nowhere and put on at some point, and put on a calm expression of I am the legendary wise man. Obviously, it was originally under the push of that fate. That we inferred a result in a destined direction, but we have to have the self-satisfaction of I have inferred the future by collecting enough information. Haha, this kind of self-righteous self-satisfaction is not really smart and wise, it's just human arrogance. Looking at Takahashi Makoto, who was talking freely, the more Uncle Ding Ding thought about it, the more he felt a chill. If all human behaviors are destined, how sad and trembling is this thing? You thought you had found a lover or even a marriage partner, but you were told that the reason you liked or even fell in love with each other was actually predetermined. Long before you were born into this world, your encounter, your love, everything had been written into a script like a novel or a comic, and was carried out meticulously towards this inevitable result. At that time, can you still be sure that you are really the destined lovers who feel deeply without knowing where the love comes from? Not only that, you are destined not to become a rich and powerful person in this life. No matter how hard you try, even at the cost of your life, you will not be able to get what you want in the end. If you are destined to have the fate of scumbag like Ito boy, no matter how carefully you handle the relationship with the girls around you, you will temporarily get the character setting of girl chasing hand of Kamijo boy under the impetus of fate. The success achieved in academics, the achievements achieved in career, but if all this has been planned by the existence called fate, then what is the meaning of human existence, and even the meaning of hard work? I have to say, this existence called destiny is really a domineering existence that can be felt but cannot be detected. So my beloved cat will definitely do what I guessed. Oh, Tintinji-san, your expression now, did you think of something interesting? It was said with full joy. Makoto Takahashi, who was following his own plan, saw Uncle Tintin's expression becoming more and more weird, and immediately asked jokingly, have you started to doubt your own life after listening to what you just said? Man. As a man, the exclusive assistant of the crazy manga artist Phoenix Academy, I will do my best to give you a special course of spiritual counseling. Ahem, please allow me to carefully and seriously refuse. Looking at the obviously malicious joyful smile on Takahashi Makoto's face, Uncle Ding Ding coughed lightly and decisively refused, while not forgetting to turn around. At this moment, the attention of a middle-level cartoonist who was in high spirits said, Cheng, let's talk about Yoshida-san's next action. If your guess is correct, Yoshida-san should have to fight with that fan next. Have you met editor Tien? Yeah. And even if my companion cat didn't go to find the newcomer, I have already given him instructions. After Takahashi Makoto raised his phone, he suddenly remembered something and sighed helplessly. He groaned, but it's a pity that I can't observe and record the surprise rare beauty of my family at close range. Tisk. It's really as bad as ever. After silently sympathizing with Yoshida for a moment, Uncle Tintin asked with some confusion, speaking of Cheng, you actually read the new chapter of the comic One Punch Man? Let the new editor pass the manuscript to Yoshida-san. It seems that you are really relieved about that, editor Itza. Don't worry. Tintin-ji-san, haven't you noticed yet? Makoto Takahashi tilted his head and looked at Uncle Tintin, then pointed at the empty room. I also secretly dispatched the two most powerful people under my command. Generals Ching Pavlov and Ching Schrödinger will go to participate in this plan together. I think Chang, you can rename them Dog General and Cat Teacher. Makoto Takahashi, are your cats and dogs still normal creatures? It's just a monster. Okay, that's probably what Uncle Tintin meant, right? As for what kind of expression Yoshida, the editor-in-chief of the tragedy, would show after knowing the truth of the matter, Uncle Tintin didn't ask, but Makoto Takahashi made it clear directly. Of course, if my beloved cat, after knowing the truth, dares to be driven by anger and come to confront me with murderous intent, that's exactly what I want. Makoto Takahashi said on his face. With a smile of expectation and pleasure, he clapped his hands back and forth and spread them out, assuming the signature pose of Lion King. My beloved cats, come on. Let's hurt each other, drink ha 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 ha. Regarding the topic of destiny, it is just a certain cat's personal opinion, working hard in the direction of his heart's desire, which is actually the direction planned by fate. Although the topic is a bit heavy, I hope you readers will not feel depressed or lose your fighting spirit. Whether affected by fate or based on personal wishes, isn't the meaning of our existence, is to leave behind that unique inner scene that belongs to oneself on the trajectory called life. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 587. After leaving Makoto Takahashi, Yoshida wandered the streets like a zombie. Every time he recalled Makoto Takahashi's dejected expression, as the editor-in-chief, Yoshida felt a sense of boredom. This was the first time Yoshida had seen Makoto Takahashi in such a state since his debut as a cartoonist. Such a helpless cartoonist. Previously, Yoshida didn't want Makoto Takahashi to be too desperate, and he didn't want Makoto Takahashi to start serializing comics in an almost burning life way, so he took the initiative to apply to the editor-in-chief of Bottle to let a certain secondary cartoonist be responsible for education and guidance. The talented painter Mashiro girl hopes to take this opportunity to distract Takahashi Makoto. However, it is precisely because of this reason, and precisely because he tried his best to recommend Makoto Takahashi to be responsible for guiding and educating the Mashiro girl in front of the editor-in-chief of Bottle, that a certain middle-level manga artist who has always been full of confidence was stimulated and attracted by Mashiro. The girl's talent for drawing beyond common sense was so affected that Makoto Takahashi was unable to continue completing the manga One Punch Man and even began to doubt his professionalism as a cartoonist. Originally, Yoshida's idea was good and right, but things eventually turned out like this. Is this probably a case of good intentions leading to bad things? Maybe I should do something. A certain editor who was just wandering aimlessly like a zombie quickly got rid of this guilt and self-blame mode after experiencing self-criticism and regret. Not only because Cheng is currently being serialized in weekly and monthly magazines, more importantly, as the editor-in-chief of the cartoonist Phoenix Academy, and as a friend of Cheng, I cannot and will not allow Cheng to such a sad exit from the comics industry. Help Takahashi Makoto regain confidence. Help Takahashi Makoto get rid of the fearful control once brought by the talented painter Mashiro. Help a middle-class cartoonist to find the world where you are again. No, it should be to find the confidence of being a crazy cartoonist again. Although it felt like a long time passed, it actually only took about an hour. After a certain editor-in-chief, Yoshida, understood the key points, he immediately wiped away his previous depression and quickly cheered up. Because as an adult, an editor-in-chief knows that whether it is regret or self-blame, if humans are immersed in these negative emotions, they will not be able to change anything and can only make the situation worse. Should I go back and comfort Chen now? But I've tried it before. There was a hesitant look on his face. Although he knew that this was of little significance, Yoshida hesitated for a moment and decided to return the same way. Let's try again, but just when Yoshida was about to take action, his cell phone rang at an untimely moment. Hey. At this time, it's Itza. When he saw the call from editor Itza, Yoshida would first think of the genius-level Mashiro girl, and then he would naturally think of the second-year manga artist under his command who had already started to doubt his life, so he looked at his phone. On the caller ID, Yoshida held the phone with a complicated expression, but did not answer the call immediately. If it hadn't been for the newcomer's application to the editor-in-chief of the Bottle, Yoshida would definitely not have thought of taking the opportunity to distract Takahashi Makoto. Naturally, there would have been no subsequent contact between Takahashi Makoto and the Mashiro girl, let alone a series of subsequent events. It happened, so it is naturally impossible to say that Yoshida has no resentment towards this female junior colleague. But Yoshida also knows very clearly that for the Takahashi Makoto's decadence incident that happened on his side, of course he cannot entirely blame the junior newcomers. It is a matter of course that every conscientious editor is responsible for the cartoonists under his command, not to mention this newcomer. Even Uncle Hattori, Yujiro, and even Yoshida are noticing when the cartoonists under his command are in poor condition. They will also try their best to help them. So the grievances are grievances, but from his own standpoint and the moral quality of a professional editor, Yoshida said that he cannot have hatred for Aitsa, a junior newcomer. After all, if you really want to count, what caused all this to happen, in the final analysis or because of myself. Therefore, after much hesitation, Yoshida chose to answer the call of this female junior. Yoshida-senpai, where are you now? Previously, the two editors-in-chief, Yoshida and Aitsa, left the headquarters of the weekly editorial department together. Due to a common road trip, the two of them walked together for a distance that was neither far nor close. The reason why I say this is because during this not-so-distant journey, Yoshida and Aitsa's favorability level improved a bit, but it was not as high as I will leave the group today. And along the way, the two editors in charge still had some exchanges. Of course, from the perspective of editor Aitsa, it was more of a constant expression of gratitude than an exchange of words. Mashiro Shoujo has made significant progress in comics during this period. Although there are still many problems in the plot of the comics, compared with the previous situation which required extremely brutal brain power to understand, it is enough. This made Ayano Aitsa, a new editor, excited and happy, so naturally, this new female editor was very grateful to Yoshida, who took the initiative to apply for Makoto Takahashi to guide and educate the Mashiro girl. I'm about to go back to Mr. Howinkuma. Hearing the other party's slightly excited voice, Yoshida frowned slightly. Yoshida knew the reason for the other party's excitement very well. It was nothing more than that Mashiro girl had made a significant improvement in comics, but it was precisely because of this that Yoshida frowned in annoyance. After all, it was because of Mashiro girl that Takahashi Makoto would go back again. Editor Aitsa seemed to be quite incomprehensible to Yoshida's behavior, but senior. By the way, Aitsa, although he knew that he should not blame this new junior colleague for the matter of Takahashi Makoto, Yoshida still interrupted the other party's unfinished words somewhat impolitely, about letting Mr. Howinkuma guide Mashiro girl's comics. Let's find a time to talk. Now I have to go to Mr. Howinkuma to deal with some things, so you go back to the editorial department first. Yeah, okay, Yoshida Sr., although Aitsa Ayano is a new editor, this does not mean that she is a newcomer in the workplace, and she can naturally. I could hear something wrong in Yoshida's tone. Then let's do this. Just when Yoshida was about to hang up the phone, he was confused by the question from the new editor Aitsa. Wait a minute, Yoshida-senpai. Hearing that Yoshida was about to end the call, Aitsa Ayano didn't want to waste the other party's time, so she went straight to the point. The comic manuscript of Mr. Howinkuma, can I take it back for you first? Yoshida's expression instantly became very exciting. Aiken's comic manuscript, is it the comic manuscript of the latest episode of the comic One Punch Man? Yes, if Aitsa Ayano could see Yoshida's expression on the phone, maybe she wouldn't say it so calmly, right? In order to guide Mashiro-chan, Mr. Howinkuma specially provided Mashiro-chan with a comic manuscript that has not yet been serialized as a reference. So, Yoshida-senpai, the comic manuscript of this episode of the comic One Punch Man, can I take it back to the editorial department for you first? Aiken, didn't you say that you couldn't draw because of the stimulation? Didn't you say that you wanted to give up your career as a manga artist because you were so frustrated? Then why did the completed manga end up in the hands of Aitsa Ayano? My guilt before. My self-blame before. Everything was just deliberately created by you, Takahashi Makoto, a devilish and evil guy, to get pleasure. After instantly thinking about the whole thing, Yashida's string of rationality broke. "Thank you for your help, Itza." Although he was thanking her, Yashida's face showed an expression of gritting his teeth, as if he wanted to cut her into 8 pieces and eat them. "Now, I have something important to do. I'm going to have a good talk with that guy, Aiken, well, talk in every sense." He rushed in all kinds of ways, but it was a pity that he was still a little late. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 588. Although Yoshida told editor Itza on the phone that he was going to have a good talk with Makoto Takahashi, however, in fact, Yoshida also knew that going back this time was not a problem that could be solved by a good talk, but the real meaning. Go ahead and ask for help. Searched Can on Google. The guilt and self-blame caused by being deceived by a certain middle-class cartoonist, the worry and entanglement caused by being deceived by a certain middle-class cartoonist, the regret and despair caused by being deceived by a certain middle-class cartoonist. You cannot blame a certain person. The editor-in-chief Yoshida's ideas are too naive and childish. It can only be said that the performance of a middle-class cartoonist is too awesome. Along the way, Yoshida was thinking about how to take this opportunity to reprimand Makoto Takahashi and teach a certain manga artist how to behave. However, when the angry Yoshida came to Makoto Takahashi's home, I found that the scene seemed different from what I imagined. Makoto Takahashi, who was wearing a white coat, put on an expression like "I've been waiting for a long time, uncle." He squinted his eyes and showed a smile that read pleasure and wrote "ghost animal." He directly put the words of a certain editor in charge. The anger level was reduced by half. More importantly, after Yoshida saw Makoto Takahashi playing with the magic sword again, and scanning himself with eyes full of killing and bloodlust from time to time, he just said, "I want to cut you into 8 big pieces." The idea of dissipated instantly. "Hey, my beloved cat, you are finally here." After gently waving the magic sword and drawing a murderous trajectory in the air, Takahashi Makoto greeted Yoshida with an indifferent expression. "Is it a threat at all? Have you read the latest chapter of the comic One Punch Man?" "Huh? Cheng, you're asking this knowingly. Didn't you give the manga manuscript to Itza?" How could I still see it? Although he had just succumbed to the threat of a middle-class cartoonist, he heard at this moment when Takahashi Makoto mentioned the manga manuscript. Yoshida's suppressed anger started to burn again, and he couldn't help but ask, "Say Cheng, do you feel happy to tease me like this?" "Well, I'm very happy to say that." Makoto Takahashi nodded indifferently and admitted, "Although I didn't get as much pleasure as expected, it's just my familiar cat. Being able to do this to you, this is quite an achievement. For this evaluation, should I say I'm very grateful." Yoshida sat down on the sofa in a sullen mood. After taking a deep breath, he roared at a middle-class cartoonist, "Don't, you're kidding. Ah Cheng, do you know that because of this time?" Yeah, I know. I know everything you want to say. It's just, blah." Makoto Takahashi interrupted Yoshida's words without caring, and waved his hand with a completely perfunctory look. Staring at Yoshida with interest, he complained with disdain, "What, it turns out that my companion cat, you just used roaring complaint. I thought that after knowing the truth, you would directly come to the door and fight with I'm going to fight to the death with a real sword. It's super disappointing. Don't think I don't know. If I am really what you said, you can use excuses like legitimate defense to kill me, right?" Yoshida, who was still very angry just now, is he gradually calming down? Is this also what is called a rush of strength, followed by failure? "My beloved cat, you think too much. Do I really need to use such troublesome methods if I really want to kill you? Even though that's what you say, but Makoto Takahashi, don't you dare put on a face like bang. The plan has been seen through. Yoshida will cry, he will definitely cry. It is said that when people are angry, they will increase their own strength and the destructive power of battle. This is the story of the adrenal glands or gene lock, but judging from the current situation, even if Yoshida continues to be angry, he may even break through because of being too angry. Transforming into a Super Saiyan due to this restriction, and facing Makoto Takahashi, I guess I am helpless. Maybe this is the difference in realm, right? Speaking of which, my familiar cat, have you really not watched this chapter of One Punch Man? Seeing Yoshida's almost berserk appearance, Takahashi Makoto wisely changed the subject, not that he was worried about Yoshida. When I turned on the Unit -1 rampage mode, I just thought it was troublesome to repair a toy that I had damaged. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. As a qualified and conscientious editor, shouldn't you be the first to observe the manga manuscript that is about to be serialized? My familiar cat, you actually have the heart to come here to provide me with pleasure, something like that. Speaking of my cat, you must have cheated to win in the Responsible Editor Showcase competition held by the editors of the weekly magazine, right? Compared to using skills like multi-stage complaint, perhaps choosing silence is Yoshida's best choice at the moment, right? By the way, Yoshida, I can't bear it anymore. Even if you know that there is an insurmountable gap between you and Takahashi Makoto in terms of military force, you still have to decisively fight head-on at this time. The loser does not lose the formation. Have you forgotten that the legendary story of blood-splattered 3 feet is about this truth? Cheng, what exactly did you do before? Why do that? Why pretend to be depressed? Why do you still show the attitude of I want to give up my career as a cartoonist? Originally, Yoshida wanted to ask Takahashi Makoto this question, but after seeing the slapping smile on the face of a certain Chuyunibaku manga artist, the editor in charge decisively gave up the opportunity to continue normal communication with Takahashi Makoto. It was obvious that what the Chuyunibaku manga artist had shown before was all a long-planned routine. If he continued to ask the above questions naively and innocently, he would definitely be played by Takahashi Makoto, for sure. My cat, it's almost time. This is the Demon King's castle, not a place where a mere mortal like you can stay for long. Looking at Yoshida, who was lost in thought halfway through his words, Takahashi Makoto waved his hand impatiently and started to drive him away. I have something else to do. Well, I have to prepare well later. Maybe after today, I can let Mashiro open the door to a new world. Originally, Yoshida wanted to leave. After all, he came to the door angrily to ask for an explanation, but was dismissed by the other party with a few words. In a place where such shameless things happened, Yoshida really couldn't stay any longer. However, after hearing that Takahashi Makoto planned to teach Mashiro today, Yoshida suddenly had the idea of staying. In addition to being curious about how Takahashi Makoto will teach the white girl, Yoshida is more concerned about the matter that a certain Chuyuni cartoonist just mentioned: let the white girl open the door to a new world. Ah-Cheng, are you going to guide that white girl later? Then, Itza should be here later, right? Yoshida stood up and came to Takahashi Makoto's desk, flipping through some comic manuscripts piled on the table, and said, anyway, the comic manuscripts are with Itza. My beloved cat, do you want to stay? All right, all right. Takahashi Makoto hesitated for a moment, then reached out and patted Yoshida on the shoulder. This way, we don't have to let that newcomer edit. Ahem, anyway, my beloved cat, please be prepared. Contrary to Yoshida's expectations, Takahashi Makoto did not drive him away, but instead made this abnormal move that was almost comforting himself. Yoshida, who knew the temper of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist well, he immediately noticed something wrong with the sudden goodwill of a certain middle school manga artist. Is there a problem? Nothing. Takahashi Makoto stared at Yoshida from head to toe, and sighed, just don't be disgusted or complain about the food. After all, it's all your fault, my cat. Too much food, it's your fault. Hey, Makoto, explain it to me clearly. Yoshida's uneasy premonition became stronger and stronger. Humph, my cat, all this is the choice of Steins Gate. In recent days, the naughty child of a relative's family occupied the computer and mentioned that he wanted to write something, and then he became the target of the whole family's criticism. The cat originally wanted to guide the child, but later it was raised to the level of "you city people look down on us rural people." Alas! Human hearts. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 589. Before the arrival of the Mashiro girl, Takahashi Makoto had reminded Yoshida many times, please be mentally prepared to be stuffed next. At the beginning, Yoshida thought that Takahashi Makoto was going to cook himself and prepare a table full of delicacies so delicious that it would make people hallucinate, so he was depressed because of being teased by a certain middle-class manga artist. The mood had long since turned into full of expectations. However, after the Mashiro girl arrived, editor Yoshida, who was full of expectations, realized what Takahashi Makoto's so-called fullness was all about. Let's not talk about the uneasy premonition that caused Yoshida, that is, how Takahashi Makoto guided and educated Mashiro on how to open the door to the new world. After all, Takahashi Makoto has just read the manga manuscript completed by Mashiro girl. And it didn't give any evaluation with reference value or guiding significance. No matter how worried and entangled Yoshida is, at least so far, there has been no scene that is difficult for the worried editor to accept. What really made the two editors-in-chief Yoshida and Itza unbearable, or what gave them a sense of fullness, was the behavior of the Mashiro girl and Sarada boy over there, as well as the dazzling display of affection between a certain comic who calls himself the Mad Devil and a certain Dark Witch. Is this really just guidance? Yoshida's mouth twitched, and he asked in a low voice to the junior editor Itza beside him, is this still called guidance? As you can see, senior, Itza also had a bitter smile on his face, and began to vent his bitterness to the senior next to him in a low voice. It is precisely because I knew this would be the case, that's why I listened at first only when you said that you wanted to observe Mr. Kilmaru from the Phoenix Academy instructing Mashiro-chan. I would propose to you that you leave early. It's not easy for you. Seeing his junior's expression as if he was about to cry, Yoshida shook his head gently and sighed helplessly. I have been subjected to this kind of treatment in recent times, ever since. In every sense of the word, Itza, you've worked hard. Get used to it, Yoshida-senpai. Itza showed the same smile as Yoshida, recalling everything that happened when he first brought Mashiro to Takahashi Makoto's place. He gently covered his chest with his hand. His smile became even more bitter. You know, the day I first came, I almost couldn't help but cry. Hey! What a spineless guy! Makoto Takahashi suddenly intervened in the conversation between the two editors in charge. I thought you would be strongly stimulated. Under the influence of his emotions, he couldn't help but burn us with torches and gasoline. Ignore this guy Chang. Seeing a certain middle school cartoonist start to bully his junior Itza, who was a little embarrassed and didn't know how to reply. Yoshida, both as a senior and a colleague, stepped forward at this critical moment. You know, Chen Makoto's favorite thing is to distort your normal cognition through some nonsense. Itza, once you start theorizing with this guy now, I can tell you with certainty that your three views will be distorted or even destroyed in a very short period of time. Hey, hee, I still have quite a lot of experience in the research on personality reshaping. Completely taking Yoshida's mocking and belittling words as a compliment, Takahashi Makoto said with a smile, while taking a look from his white coat. He took out a black notebook from the inside of his pocket and waved it in front of the two editors. Since you are wearing a white coat, you must naturally have the professional standards related to it in human cognition, but it is a pity that I can't. I want to be a doctor or scientist full-time, so I can only occasionally take part in side professions such as forensic medicine. Chang, is this in your hand? After watching Makoto Takahashi quickly write a few strokes on the black notebook with an indifferent expression, Yoshida couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, and then looked at the expression on his face next to him. The somewhat pale junior Itza, at this moment, the two editors in charge once again recalled something that they could forget, and the fear that that thing once brought. Huh? My beloved cat, haven't you already guessed it? Are you sure you still need me to tell you? Makoto Takahashi's tone was so calm, as if he was chatting between neighbors. Tell me what I want to say. Familiar cat, I guess you still have 37 seconds to leave some news proving that you have been in and loved this world. Originally, Yoshida was sure that the small black notebook in Takahashi Makoto's hand was definitely a fake. After all, although a certain second-level manga artist had some unusual thinking, he would not turn into a being like a murderer. However, before the incident I witnessed with editor Itza was too shocking for both Yoshida and Itza. His name was recorded, and he died of cardiac paralysis 40 seconds later. You must know that at that time, Yoshida and Itza witnessed the whole thing. Oh, my beloved cat was so desperate before dying, it's really pleasant. However, not to mention 40 seconds, a whole minute has passed, and Yoshida still hasn't felt anything strange at all, standing there safe and sound. It's not like he's safe and sound, after all, he's covered in cold sweat. From a biological point of view, the body has lost some water. Takahashi Makoto laughed so hard that he deserved a slap. Rina punched Takahashi Makoto with her little fist in annoyance, with a sneer on her face, and the girl Mashiro opened her eyes wide and silently observed the changes in the expressions of the two editors in charge. The only relatively normal boy, Sarada, looked at the two editors in charge with an apologetic face, scratching the back of his head and trying to squeeze out an awkward smile. Girl, the whole process has been observed and recorded, right? Fear of the unknown and awe of death, this is what humans call proof of survival. As for what the two editors in charge felt at the moment, Takahashi Makoto did not pay too much attention, but turned to the thoughtful Mashiro girl and said, whenever you are in trouble, whenever you feel that you can't make a choice, you can imagine that you are about to die. In this way, you will find the most precious and important existence to you. Remember the attachment and reluctance, and also remember the obsession that you would rather die than cut off, and then integrate that feeling into your comics. In the future, you will definitely become a very remarkable cartoonist. Yes, I know, white coat. A glimmer flashed in the eyes of the girl Mashiro, and she nodded solemnly, and then she turned to look at the boy Sarada, and said something that was quite in harmony with the style of the scene at this time. Sarada. Mashiro, that. It was obvious that the boy Sarada had the three major illusions in his life at this moment. She likes me. Whether this was an illusion or not, everyone present could see it very clearly, but everyone maintained a tacit understanding and did not break this pre-confession atmosphere. Even the two editors Yoshida and Itza, who had been teased before, were the same. I want to eat Bonkachan. Mashiro pointed at the bag carried by Kota, and then tried to open her mouth wide. Is Bonkachan everything to you? Kota's face, which was originally just a little red, turned red in an instant. Rather than saying that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry, he took out a bag of Bonkachan, quickly tore it open and stuffed it into Mashiro's mouth, and blamed her proudly. If it weren't for the hard work of drawing comics, I would never give it to you outside of normal eating hours. But let's make it clear that you can only eat one piece. Otherwise, you won't be able to eat dinner when you go back later. Is this the feeling of eating too much that Makoto Takahashi mentioned before? Yoshida now has a vague understanding of this. Tisk. This feeling comes again. I feel that the seal of the evil dragon is a little loose. Takahashi Makoto suddenly held his right arm with a painful look, and his body shook exaggeratedly, which, in order to strengthen the seal and prevent the appearance of the world-destroying evil dragon, I think I need to replenish a lot of magic now. Your Majesty, the great Phoenix Court Kyoma, do you need me to replenish your magic at this moment? Okay. As the voice fell, Rina immediately hugged Takahashi Makoto with both hands, without paying any attention to the two editors and two children next to her, and gave her a sweet kiss directly. Replenish magic. Looking at the unbridled intimacy between Takahashi Makoto and Rina, the hug on the head of the girl Mashiro shook. Korita, I want it too. Hey 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 hey. This, that. The young boy Kota's heartbeat was rapid, and he was completely confused. He is really a simple boy. Faced with this behavior of forcing people to eat dog food without any consideration for others, the two editors looked at each other in bewilderment. The feeling that lingered in their hearts at this moment, was probably the legendary feeling of fullness, right? Speaking of which, after being stuffed with a belly full of dog food, maybe I won't have to eat for the next 3 days. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 590. Chapter 590. Dessert is very important, but don't neglect the main meal. For the editors-in-chief Yoshida and Itza, the most correct thing to do at this time is to leave as quickly and as conveniently as possible. There is nothing wrong with that, as it should be. Because for two single editors who are still not married in their 30s, the act of two young couples showing affection is not just a simple act of forcefully spreading dog food. After all, this is a ritual that is enough to awaken origin. Searched can on Google. After all, this is enough stimulation to cause reversal impulse. After all, this is still an act of whipping that is enough to prompt the birth of resentment and hatred. But just when the two editors in charge were about to leave secretly, Makoto Takahashi suddenly stopped the behavior of stuffing dog food, which read as pleasant and written as crazy. My beloved cats, are you just planning to leave like this? Takahashi Makoto's tone and way of speaking were just like the way a villain in an anime prepares to kill someone after being discovered doing a behind-the-scenes deal. By the way, don't you think, have you seen too much and known too much today? Tisk. What else do you want, Chen? Yoshida turned a blind eye to Takahashi Makoto's threatening tone, after looking at his colleague Itza, who was on the editorial side of the weekly magazine. Yoshida curled his lips in displeasure. Don't think that being the editor-in-chief of a weekly is a very leisurely profession. Chen, let me tell you, you must know our daily work. In the following time, Yoshida was like a middle-aged aunt, going from editorial work to personal life, as if to vent the pressure of life, and began to spit out her bitterness to Takahashi Makoto, temporarily suppressing her momentum in a short period of time. A certain second-year cartoonist, this is not because Yoshida intends to show his strong side in front of the new editor, but because of the previous series of forced dog food behavior. The resentment in the heart of a responsible editor has exceeded the sky, and he would rather choose now. I gave up on myself and had a head-on confrontation with a middle-class cartoonist, and I didn't want to continue to humiliate and compromise. My beloved cat, I never realized that you actually have a complaining ability that rivals that of Shinpei-san, Makoto Takahashi finally said to the editor when Yoshida paused for the third time to adjust his breathing. The state of chattering is interrupted. By the way, if you're not in a hurry to leave, just wait a moment. Huh? Is there anything else? After Yoshida was stunned for a moment, a look of despair immediately appeared on his face. He was quite impatient and even said in a tone that was about to go berserk, is it possible, Aiken, should you not? Are you still thinking about the series of behaviors before you came here? If this is the case, I have no intention of continuing to play with you. Me too. Editor Itza showed a helpless smile on his face, and looked at Sarada boy who had finished Mashiro's feeding over there. If I do it again, I guess I will start to doubt my next move. Life. When you see others showing affection, when others treat you like shit, human beings, especially single people who are still lonely, will naturally feel depressed and irritable, and may even wonder if they have experienced a fake life. You will wonder if the whole world is targeting you. Otherwise, why is it that while others are in pairs, I am still single? Why is it that others have already found a life partner, but I am still drifting away on the road to die alone? Not everyone who remains single until middle age has the courage to look squarely at all displays of affection and behavior. Not every self-proclaimed single noble has a heart that is so strong that it is invulnerable to all things. Do it again? Although I don't mind saying that, but considering your endurance as inferior humans, and considering the upper limit of your mere ant-like container, I will mercifully let you go this time. In response to the wails of the two editors-in-chief, Takahashi Makoto curled his lips in disdain and turned to look at the Mashiro girl over there who had already eaten a large amount of bonkachin. Girl, you should be full now, right? No matter from physically and mentally. After a moment of hesitation, the Mashiro girl turned her head and stared at the Sarada boy opposite her with eyes that read desire and cannot describe words. After hesitating for a moment, she nodded and answered Makoto Takahashi's question. Not even close. Oh, have you understood the original sins of greed and gluttony so quickly? Tisk, girl, you really have a great future as a popular manga artist, Makoto Takahashi boasted about Mashiro girl without hesitation. After a while, the conversation changed, but in order to allow you to open the door to the new world without any hindrance, girl, in addition to tasting desserts, you can't ignore the main meal. Dessert, the Mashiro girl looked at the Sarada boy next to her, then looked at Makoto Takahashi with eyes full of doubts. White coat, dinner is. Allah, girl, you don't think that just relying on sweet desserts is enough to support a comic, or even, support your life? Makoto Takahashi smacked his lips, his face he showed a disdainful smile, shook his head slightly, put on an aura of I am here, and said slowly, don't look at the fact that I and the witch now rule the entire demon world safely. You must know that back then, in order to conquer the witch and the entire demon world, I am the elite slime boss who has defeated me countless times. Makoto-kun, after hearing a long-lost word used by Takahashi Makoto, Rina hummed helplessly and dissatisfied. Okay, it's not the slime leader's elite headquarters, right? Makoto Takahashi spread his hands helplessly, and said as if he was comforting Rina, admitting defeat, speaking of the fact that he can counterattack his own disciple, the childhood sweetheart of the Minotaur's own disciple. This is not something that a mere slime leader elite can do, but compared to the existence of idle Uncle Yin who can complete the threat of telling your daughter to be careful on the way to school. After 10 years, it is still slightly different. Tell me if there is any difference. Uncle, what are you talking about? Although Takahashi Makoto did not mention himself in his words, the boy Sarada always felt that he was being targeted. Is this not an illusion? Hey. You are really boring, young man. If you respect Jingzong Haoji-san, you should choose to confront me head-on at this moment. After seeing the boy Sarada act naive again, Takahashi Makoto shook his head helplessly. He shook his head, stood up, walked to the piano and sat down. He ran his fingers over the black and white keys. After taking a deep breath, he turned to Rina and said, "Witch, let your singing voice full of charm and hallucination break through the seal again. Come back to the world again." Is it, that one? Although Takahashi Makoto didn't say which song he wanted to sing, Rina asked in a slightly uneasy tone as if she already knew it, "Is there really no problem, Makoto, Jun?" "Man," Makoto Takahashi nodded and confirmed, then turned his attention to the Mashiro girl. "Girl, I think you will be able to open the door to a new world today after listening to the witch's song." Yeah, I'll do my best." Mashiro girl waved her fist, as if to cheer herself up and show her determination to Takahashi Makoto. Wait. Yoshida frowned and couldn't help but speak, but unfortunately, visual inspection seems to be a little late. It's useless to talk more. Makoto Takahashi stopped Yoshida unfinished words without politeness, and started tapping the black and white keys with his fingers. Then "Witch, let's start singing that song that makes your soul tremble." Speaking of strategies for women, a certain cat really thinks that Uncle Yin is a god. At least the difficulty of the target should be S and or even X level. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao-Do-Sd Email. Chapter 591. Now, if you can give up everything and live with a smile, will it become easier? Like a soft question or a soft answer to herself, when Rina's singing sounded along with the sound of the piano, no matter the two editors who wanted to escape, or the Mashiro girl and Sari who were preparing to start the next round of True Love show Kill Too Young, he was instantly brought into some ethereal realm. Rina's live singing, it's been a long time since I last. Compared with the other three people who have completely lost their souls to Rina's singing, Yoshida's situation is slightly better. After all, Yoshida, as the editor-in-chief of a certain second-year manga artist, has not only witnessed Takahashi Makoto's debut until today, he has become a popular weekly. In addition to the whole process of becoming a cartoonist, I also witnessed the whole process of a persistent girl, from an unknown to a smash idol singer, and now she has entered the world of voice acting. It's too cruel. It's too cruel. Just destroy my body. Split it apart. Do with it as you like. If at the beginning, both the piano music played by Makoto Takahashi and Rina singing sounded like a girl sighing to herself, then after the chorus started, Rina's singing voice was almost hoarse, but it truly touches the human soul. Because whether it was Yoshida who was already prepared, or the other three who were completely unprepared and completely lost, after hearing the chorus, it seemed that they really felt that a heartbroken girl was crying, venting, and screaming at the top of her lungs. Compared to the other three, Mashiro was the most impressed by Rina's singing. Maybe it was because she was addicted to Rina's singing, or maybe it was because her soul was touched by Rina's singing, or maybe it was because Rina's singing reminded her of something. The Mashiro girl who always maintained an expressionless face, but she didn't know it. I shed tears unconsciously. After Rina completed the achievement of touching the soul with singing, although Takahashi Makoto didn't say anything, the expression on his face that said if you don't leave, I will divide you into 17 parts was obvious. It implies that the time for the four outsiders to leave has come. Then, Yoshida took back the manga manuscript of One Punch Man from editor Itza and left with a somewhat depressed expression. After Itza, the older leftover girl, suffered a lot from Love Show Kill, she suffered a fatal blow from Rina's soul-touching singing voice, and then left with a rather complicated expression. By the way, as for this editor, who seems to be quite straightforward, bold, and informal, is actually a woman with sensitive nerves and delicate mind. The last ones to leave Takahashi Makoto's house were Mashiro girl and Sarada boy. Compared with the two editors who have gone through social hardships and have learned how to control their emotions, the young Sarada boy and the simple Mashiro girl have not experienced too many complicated things, but their hearts and souls are the same. I was touched by Rina singing like never before. White coat. Before leaving, the Mashiro girl stared at Makoto Takahashi with eyes that had just cried. She covered her heart with both hands and asked softly like a lost cat, "Why, does it feel uncomfortable here?" Girl, remember your feelings at this moment. This will be the key to opening the door to a new world for you. As a fellow cartoonist, this is the only thing I can teach you. Makoto Takahashi spread his hands. Said in a rather nonchalant tone, but regarding your question, essay, who knows? Maybe you already have the answer yourself. Oh, the white girl nodded in understanding. After pondering for a moment, she asked again hesitantly, White coat, after I finish the new comic draft, will you help me again? You must rely on yourself. A certain evil doctor who was killed by a knife filled with snake venom once insisted on saying this from the time he appeared until his death. Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes and stared at the Mashiro girl. So it's good to be happy, no matter the pain. I have taught you what I know about how to obtain pleasure, so girl, just do the rest by yourself. Eh? Uncle, are you sure you have really taught Mashiro well? The Sarada boy stared at Makoto Takahashi with questioning eyes, not to mention that what I just said sounded quite unreliable. I always feel that during this period of time, what you have taught me is all. Tisk, 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 boy, you seem to want to say, no, you must have said something very outrageous. Takahashi Makoto suddenly walked up to the boy Sarada, and slapped the boy hard on the shoulder and face. He showed an extremely kind smile and said, the reason why you didn't understand what I taught the pure white girl is because you are just an ordinary person. Hey, tell me why I want to be with an ant like you. Explain. Sure enough, compared to the pensive Mashiro girl, the obviously spoiled expression on Sarada boy's face when he left made Takahashi Makoto pleased even more. Makoto-kun, is there really no problem with this? After everyone left, Rina obediently sat next to Takahashi Makoto and asked with some worry, I heard from my lovely junior that Mashiro-chan seems. You're a real man. Makoto Takahashi gently hugged Rina and comforted her with an affirmative tone. If it was Mashiro, she would definitely understand what I want to teach her today. This is neither about talent nor about giftedness. To put it in the way you said before, a girl in love is the strongest. Yeah, that should be right, right. Compared to Makoto Takahashi and Rina, who are in a sweet relationship here, a certain editor in charge finally relieved a lot of the depression brought by Rina singing after returning to the editorial base, but compared to students who are still in campus life, adults can have temporary feelings because of some touches, but they can't be as reckless and sentimental as they were when they were young. Because of their sentimentality and showing their cowardice, they will be ridiculed and abandoned by this beautiful but cruel world. This is probably the price of becoming a member of society, right? Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Important things must be said 3 times. Therefore, if there are similar missions in the future, please seek help from others. By the way, a friendly reminder, if there are any more incidents like this that hinder my plan, my cat, I will kill you even if you are a god. That's all. Just when Yoshida was about to observe the One Punch Man comic manuscript he had just obtained, he received a reminder email from a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. From the perspective of law and social common sense, Takahashi Makoto's sudden message should be regarded as a threatening email that constitutes intimidation, right? Tisk, when it comes to serializing multiple comics at the same time, as expected, that guy Makoto still hasn't given up. Regarding the threats from a certain Chuyuni cartoonist, the editor-in-chief Yoshida said that he had long been accustomed to it. After taking out the comic manuscript from the file bag, Yoshida decisively chose to turn off the phone and ignore the middle school manga artist, but he muttered bitterly, anyway, even if you plan to serialize multiple comics at the same time, you still need the cooperation of Shinzuma Eiji. As long as I work with Yujiro to persuade Shinzuma Eiji, if no one cooperates with you, I wonder how you, Shinzuma, will find time to complete the comic manuscript, hee. Speaking of Yoshida, let me remind you a little bit. You seem to have forgotten the white girl who was specially sent to Takahashi Makoto for a certain mission before? I recommend the song Kokorozushi, which I really like. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 592. What kind of feeling would it be like to be forced to stuff dog food until it creates a feeling of satiety state? The 2 editors Yoshida and Itza, who were the subjects of this trial, have never disclosed information about this anywhere. What they experienced at Makoto Takahashi's house that day was a huge surprise to the 2 single editors. A taboo that I definitely don't want to recall or even mention. The only thing that depressed the editors on the weekly editorial side was that since that day, for a whole month, whether it was the sinister editor Yoshida or the optimistic and bold newcomer Itza, they had no idea about the occasional mention of love. Colleagues who use words like get married or get married will always give them a look of ferocious hatred immediately. Besides, I will kill you with my gaze, well, that should probably be the look in my eyes. Compared to the editor in charge, Makoto Takahashi's mood these days is very pleasant. A certain second-grade cartoonist has an expectant smile on his face all day long. He even laughs inexplicably sometimes, which makes Uncle Tintin, his assistant, feel a lot of pressure. Big. Because Uncle Tintin knows that whenever Takahashi Makoto shows this joyful smile, it means that someone is going to be unlucky, and judging from past experience, that tragically unlucky person there is a 90% chance that it will be Yoshida, the editor-in-chief of the crazy manga artist Shoin Yoshima. As for the remaining 10%, maybe it should be myself as the assistant. However, regarding this matter, Uncle Tintin was not too depressed, nor did he put on an expression of no love left in life. After all, now Takahashi Makoto has made it clear that he is going to cause trouble, and at least he has gained some confidence. Mental preparation. If you are like Yoshida, you are directly tricked and killed without any psychological preparation. Uncle Tintin said that if it were him, if he did not increase his salary and benefits as mental damage compensation, he would definitely be punished as soon as possible. Just roll up your sleeves and leave. Be careful and cautious. This is Uncle Tintin's working status these days. Whenever there is any disturbance around him, Uncle Tintin will always be extremely alert, worried that everything is a trap set by some middle-class cartoonist. However, after this kind of day lasted for a full month, Uncle Tintin finally noticed it. The source of Makoto Takahashi's abnormality this time. Originally as an assistant to a cartoonist, especially a cartoonist like Takahashi Makoto who serialized multiple cartoons at the same time, Uncle Tintin had a lot of work to do. After all, his salary was exactly double that of his peers. According to the principle of equal exchange, it is natural that Uncle Tintin needs to pay equal labor force. However, in this month, Uncle Tintin's salary has not been reduced, but his workload has dropped a lot. To put it simply, Uncle Tintin's daily work now is only responsible for publishing the comic One Punch Man. It is enough to complete the processing of the manga manuscript. However, Makoto Takahashi unusually prohibited Uncle Tintin from interfering with the manga manuscript of White Rabbit Candy, which originally needed help to be completed. Even advance observation was expressly prohibited. He is prohibited from helping to complete the comic draft of White Rabbit Candy, and he is even prohibited from observing the plot of this comic in advance as an assistant. These signs all imply that Takahashi Makoto's next step is to obtain the noble phantasm of pleasure against others, is obviously the comic book White Rabbit Candy. To be precise, it should be the next plot of the comic White Rabbit Candy. Is there any way to unfold the next plot of White Rabbit Candy? Uncle Tintin was quite confused about this matter. He even asked Makoto Takahashi more than once, if you want to know the content of the previous chapter, the plot of Shikarin rejecting the confession of his childhood sweetheart Yuaki Futani has left many readers confused for a long time, and according to your past deceptive character, Cheng, the next plot should go in a more heart-wrenching and sadistic direction, right? No, when readers applaud, there will definitely be a happy ending. And it's heart-wrenching and heart-wrenching. Makoto Takahashi pretended to be incomprehensible and said, which made Uncle Tintin feel very, if you want to say something, speaking of Ding-Ding-Ji-san, I really didn't expect, it turns out that in your impression, I actually exist like that. I mean, Cheng, you should have had this kind of self-awareness a long time ago, right? Uncle Ding Ding drew a thin line while looking coldly at a middle school cartoonist who had no self-awareness. Don't say that many readers haven't. I know Shinkai Makoto, think back for a moment about the comics you have serialized since your debut, huh? What do you mean, Makoto Takahashi seemed to be quite unhappy with Uncle Tintin's attitude and threw the brush aside. You are like this, Tintin-ji-san, and so is my companion cat. If you really have anything to do with me, just tell me your opinion. For the sake of you having the courage to confront me, I promise I will only beat you half to death. Hey, is Cheng a threat? It's definitely a threat. Uncle Ding Ding looked at the somewhat annoyed Takahashi Cheng, and wisely chose to change the subject. Speaking of Cheng, I remember that you seem to be should you secretly take the unpublished comic manuscripts of White Rabbit Candy out and show them to others. Eh? Tintin Gi-san, you actually noticed this? Makoto Takahashi looked at Uncle Tintin in surprise. After pondering for a moment, he picked up the magic sword leaning against the table and said coldly. Asked, are you really a spy sent by the organization? Tell me, who is the person responsible for contacting you? No. This is not the time, right? Ignoring Takahashi Makoto's seemingly bluff threat, Uncle Ding Ding stared at Takahashi Makoto with a serious expression. I mean, Cheng, what are you doing? Do you have a little common sense? Haven't you signed a contract with the monthly magazine before? It's best not to let others read the manga manuscript before it is published. If the other party has malicious intentions, just report it to them. If the plot is spoiled in advance, it will cause a lot of trouble. Man. Let's not talk about the possibility of that kind of thing happening. Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes and recalled that he had asked an uncle to observe the manga manuscript of White Rabbit Candy in advance, and a smile named pleasure appeared on his face. Smiled, for me, the sense of pleasure this thing brings me is completely in line with the principle of equivalent exchange. Tisk, I'm getting more and more curious now. Seeing the smile on Takahashi Makoto's face, Uncle Tintin curled his lips in displeasure. I'm not only starting to be curious about what Cheng said about White Rabbit Candy, what kind of plot has been drawn, and what's even more curious is, Cheng, who did you allow to watch the unpublished plot in advance? Tintin Gi-san, do you also want to observe in advance? After Takahashi Makoto took back the devil's sword, he waved his hand and rejected Uncle Tintin's request without thinking at all. No. This is used to obtain pleasure, an important treasure. And more importantly. Hey, is this equivalent exchange again? Uncle Tintin smacked his lips. After pondering for a moment, driven by curiosity, he decisively gave up his hesitation and entered the negotiation mode with Makoto Takahashi. Then, what do you need me to do? Tintin Gi-san, are you sure? Tintin Gi-san, as an assistant, I shouldn't have refused your request. Makoto Takahashi looked at Uncle Tintin up and down in surprise. After being seen with hair all over his body, he shook his head regretfully and once again rejected the request of the assistant uncle, but unfortunately, the situation is slightly different this time. After all, Ding Ding Ji-san, your strength is very good to me, you know. It might be possible to withstand one or two of my moves, but if you have a life and death fight with my real sword, haha. Of course, if you strongly demand it, it's not impossible. After a moment of silence, Uncle Tintin recalled that he almost took a trip to the underworld, and asked with twitching corners of his mouth, isn't it just reading a comic? Is it necessary to involve a fight? Just reading comics? Humph, Tintin Gi-san, you underestimate the career of a cartoonist. Makoto Takahashi sighed in a tone of just a mere ant really doesn't know the heights of heaven and earth. In some worlds, those a self-proclaimed duelist can save the world even by playing cards, let alone a profession like a cartoonist that can control people's hearts and change human cognition. Okay, it's just my limited knowledge. Uncle Tintin, who understood very well that arguing with Makoto Takahashi on unreliable theories is definitely seeking death, decisively chose to surrender and use the topic change skill again. But what I'm curious about now is the guy who meets the conditions for observing the comic manuscript really a human being? It is natural to have such doubts. After all, according to Uncle Tintin's knowledge, the martial arts value of a certain middle-class cartoonist is definitely at the non-human level. Who told the other party to have the bonus of madness, a talent skill? Makoto Takahashi spread his hands indifferently, with a look of anticipation on his face. If Tintin Ji-san, you want to confirm, wait until this after the episode White Rabbit Candy is published, I will invite you to observe it in person. This, okay, intellectually, Uncle Ding Ding really wanted to refuse. but at this moment, curiosity has overwhelmingly defeated Uncle Tintin's so-called reason.